Welcome back to the S&T Football Podcast. Today in this episode, I wanted to talk about the hidden gems of this past 2026 NFL Draft. Some of the players that maybe a lot of you are not familiar with, guys that went in later rounds during the draft. We're going to be talking about guys that were not like first round guys. They went later on in the draft, but I believe that they were really good steals. They're really good, talented players, all sprinkled throughout the draft each and every year. And as guys coming out of the round 6, round 7, even undrafted, year after year, they become the storyline of the NFL, the Cinderella story of the guys that were seen as, not one of the better players in their draft class, didn't seem like they had what it took. They were doubted. The draft grades that they were given were lower than others. And, they just ended up being studs at the pro level because they just put their head down, they went to work, and they showed that they belonged. Guys like Austin Eckler, who were undrafted and ended up being a really good running back for the Chargers. And of course, the GOAT, Tom Brady, round 6. I mean, greatest of all time. So, I want to talk about those guys today. I want to talk about the Tom Brady type steals of the draft in this episode. So we're going to be talking about different guys that went in round 2 and later on. I do believe I have one first round guy, but he went at like the last pick of the first round. So I kind of technically slipped it in, counted it in, but basically guys that went in round 2 or later in the draft. I want to talk about them, and I want to talk about these guys that were studs at the college level. I'm really familiar with most of these guys, basically all of these guys here. I saw them make a name for themselves at the college level for their respective schools, and it's really cool to see teams value them later on in the draft. They ended up taking them with later round draft picks, and they could end up being day one starters. Just because a team took you in the third round doesn't mean that you can't end up being a day one starter. You know what I mean? So these guys have an opportunity in front of them, and I love it for them. So we're going to be talking about different guys that I think were underrated steals of the 2026 NFL draft. First guy we're going to talk about is the brother of an already very good NFL talent for the Atlanta Falcons. We have Avion Terrell out of Clemson. Avion Terrell, 5'11", 180 pounds. He was taken in the second round with the 48th pick. 48th pick in the second round goes to Atlanta, and he joins his brother in Atlanta. His brother, AJ Terrell, unites with his superstar cornerback brother for the Atlanta Falcons. So, two guys that grew up together in Atlanta. You know what I mean? Like, they're both from Atlanta, grew up in Atlanta, both went to Clemson, both were great standouts at Clemson, and now they're both back in their hometowns playing for the same hometown team, and they happen to be brothers. So, a great story to kick it off. This guy was a stud at Clemson. Now, Clemson, like I said in our last episode regarding Cade Klubnik, who was drafted to the Jets, the quarterback, Avion Terrell played for a team that was not as good as those previous Clemson teams that we got used to. College football fans know that Clemson was running things about 5 to 8 years ago, I would say, in that range, when they went to 3 straight national championships against Alabama. When they had guys like Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, Taj Boyd, Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams, all those kind of guys that came out of Clemson. Since then, they've kind of fallen off. These past couple years have been rough. A couple seasons ago, they barely made the playoff. They were the only 9-3 team to make the playoff, and they lost in the first round. This past year, they barely made a bowl game at like 6-6 or 7-5. So, this experience at Clemson for both of these guys has not been the kind of experience that they were probably hoping for when they committed, but both of them still proved to be very good talents, and they both end up still getting drafted regarding to Cade Klubnik and now Avion Terrell. So Avion Terrell joins a Falcons secondary that is still looking to strengthen itself a little bit. Obviously, they have his brother, AJ Terrell, holding things down already. They got a couple nice pieces in the secondary, but they do still need to shore up that secondary a little bit because at times in the NFC South, they do get thrown on and torched by really good quarterbacks. So obviously that's why they went early and got themselves another corner to basically lock down the other side. So both brothers are going to be locking down both sides. We're going to have one brother on one side, one brother on the other side. So cool story for the Terrell brothers. Terrell goes in the second round, 48th pick to Atlanta. The next player I want to talk about is Jacoby Lane, wide receiver out of USC goes in round 3 to the Baltimore Ravens. Round 3, pick 80. 6'4", 200 pounds. This is a really big guy. I saw that he is already the Ravens' biggest receiver. So, shout out to him. Coming out of USC, obviously USC is one of the wide receiver factories. They're one of the wide receiver college factories in the NFL. USC produces wide receivers at a very high prolific rate. Them in schools like, LSU and Ohio State and Alabama. USC is right there with the best of them. Guys like, it makes you think of, on top of my head right now, I'm thinking of Juju Smith-Schuster, Jordan Addison, guys like that. But USC, a very good wide receiver school. So Jacoby Lane goes to them in the third round. The Ravens are always looking for receivers. They're one of those teams that have had a tough time getting those guys on the outside to consistently playing well. They don't really have too much star power on the outside. They've tried to find it in guys like, Zay Flowers and, Mark Andrews at the tight end position. But the Ravens are still lacking in that receiver department. And at times you do see it when the receivers cannot get separation. Because the Ravens are always playing the best of the best in the NFL. So, when you're going against the best of the best defenses, they know that if they can keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket, that they have a good chance of winning. If Lamar Jackson is in the pocket, he's looking for a guy, but he can't find one, and he can't take off and run because maybe they have a spy. You know, a lot of teams put a spy on Lamar like 24/7 because he is always a threat to take off running as well. If you can keep Lamar in the pocket, that's the recipe to beat the Ravens. So that's why the Ravens need more talent on the outside. They need more separation so that they can let Lamar let it fly and stop holding on to the ball so long. Because when Lamar holds on to the ball, that is literally the Ravens' kryptonite. When Lamar holds on to the ball and he's not running, you know what I mean? If he's running, it's fine. But when he holds on to the ball and he's sitting in the pocket, that is where the Ravens lose games. So, guys like Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, like I said, they're good. They're good players, but at times they have a hard time separating against the best of the best defenses. You see it against teams like the Chiefs and even their own divisional opponents in the AFC North. So this is a really good pick for the Ravens in the third round, going ahead and getting a really talented receiver out of USC, and it should be a very good addition for them for this upcoming season. So watch out for the Ravens. Chris Braswell, the second out of Tennessee, the wide receiver, 6'5", 200 pounds. So he's even bigger than the last guy we talked about, Jacoby Lane. Round 3, pick 83 to the Carolina Panthers. Chris Braswell goes out of Tennessee, and he was a very dynamic receiver at Tennessee. Tennessee is another really good wide receiver factory school. They produce a lot of good wide receivers. Thinking of Jalen Hyatt, who just came out of Tennessee, who's on the Giants now. Yeah, Chris Braswell was a very flashy receiver at Tennessee. Made a lot of really good plays, a lot of highlight reel plays for him. He's that type of receiver that's going to be a deep threat and that's going to catch the ball and he's going to race down the sideline and be gone. So good luck catching a guy like this. 6'5", like I said, so he's huge. So you're already going to have a hard time keeping up with him in coverage because he owns the jump ball at 6'5". So going to be a tough time for defenses in Carolina. And then, he goes along. He joins a receiving room that's already looking pretty decent with guys like Jimmy Horn, who's a young guy out of Colorado, Xavier Legette, young guy out of South Carolina, Tetora McMillan, who just got drafted last year out of Arizona. You have John Mechie, young guy out of Alabama. So all kind of young star, or not to say young star, but young talented receivers in the Carolina Panthers receiving room right now. So Chris Braswell joins a very good receiving room. The Panthers are obviously looking to give Bryce Young as much talent on the outside as possible. They want the Bryce Young experiment to work out. Like we know, Bryce Young has had an up and down career since coming out of Alabama, going to the Panthers #1 overall, and couple seasons ago, it almost seemed like the Panthers were ready to give up on him. That's the crazy thing. He got benched, and Andy Dalton was out there playing for a while, but then Andy Dalton started playing terrible, so they went back to him. And then all of a sudden, something clicked for him, and he started getting some of that Bryce Young magic back. So now that they have seen some good things from Bryce Young, they are trying to give him as much help as possible. Clearly, they still need to strengthen up the O-line a little bit, but they're working on it, and they're getting him as much talent on the outside as possible. So the Panthers, as we know, they made a push last season. They didn't make it to the playoffs, but they had a push at the end of the year. And what did they finish? Like 8-9? They went like 8-9, I believe, 7-10. So a couple games swing their way this upcoming season, and they will be a playoff contender. So if Bryce Young can put it together with all these young receivers, watch out for Carolina. And I am looking forward to talking about these next guys coming out of Indiana. Here's the first one, Elijah Surratt, wide receiver out of Indiana, 6'2", 209. He went in the fourth round, 115 to guess who? The Baltimore Ravens. Yes, the Baltimore Ravens. They want receivers, baby. They're not playing around. They went ahead and took another receiver back to back, basically. I mean, round 4, round 3. So they're not playing around. They got Jacoby Lane already out of USC, and now they get Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. And for anybody who was watching the Indiana football Hoosiers last season in their run to a national championship, Elijah Surratt was all over the field. Fernando Mendoza was feeding him. Elijah Surratt, a very crisp route runner. This guy was the king of separation this past season in Indiana. Every time I saw him, it seemed like he was running an out route and he was getting like 2 yards of separation on just that instant, that initial break, because this guy has the moves. He's a very good route runner. He is able to get space. He's able to get open all the time. And he obviously was paid dividends this past season at Indiana because of that. He was a big part of the reason why they were so successful, going undefeated and winning a national championship. He was a big part of the success that Fernando Mendoza had, going from virtually an unknown coming from Cal and basically turning that into a national championship, a Heisman Trophy, and a #1 overall draft pick. So Elijah Surratt goes in the fourth round. He gets drafted himself. He does well for himself. It looks like he's already looking good in training camp for the Ravens. So they're already talking about saying good things about him. So, like I said, he showed it at Indiana. I saw it on the field. I saw it through the screen on the field, and he was one of the more exciting players to watch in college football in general, especially on the Indiana team this past season. So, shout out to him, and his brother Amari Cooper got drafted to the Jets as well. As we'll talk about, both of these guys are studs, and great to see them go to the NFL. Next up, we got Malik Muhammad, cornerback out of Texas, goes in round 4. Pick 124 to the Chicago Bears, 6', 188. He was a star at Texas. He was always around the football in the Longhorns secondary. He's a ball hawk, a hard hitter as well. And it seems like anytime I saw a hard hit on the Texas defense last season or the year before, Muhammad was somewhere close to the ball. So Malik Muhammad was a really good player down there in Austin, Texas. A ball hawk, like I said, always around the football. And the Bears need to keep adding to their secondary. That has been one of their weaknesses for the past few years now. Probably one of their bigger weaknesses that has been brought up time and time again, season after season. They've seemed to have problems in the secondary at their cornerback and safety positions. Also have dealt with injuries and things like that as well. So not surprising to see the Bears take a corner. They take one out of Texas. Texas is known for producing some pretty good secondary players, corners and safeties and linebackers, defensive tackles, D ends. They always seem to have a pretty good defense, especially now that Texas has joined the SEC, and now they can get SEC recruits and things like that. So Malik Muhammad goes to the Bears in round 4. He should be a very good addition to their secondary. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a day 1 starter, given that the Bears are trying to do a lot of things in their secondary, because that is where they have struggled in the past couple seasons, like I've said. So, they already have guys like Tyreek Stevenson and Jalen Johnson holding it down for them the past few years, but they already drafted, or I would say they also drafted Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon, a safety. So they went ahead and got a safety as well, the second best safety in the draft, by the way. So they went ahead and got one early. And then they also just got Kobe Bryant, cornerback from the Seahawks, who just came over from the Super Bowl champs, who was a very good corner for them. So the Bears are trying to do things in the secondary on defense. They should be much better this upcoming season. Like we know, Caleb Williams is starting to come into his own on the other side of the ball with Ben Johnson now in the building. The offense looks great. The Bears made the playoffs this past year for who knows how long before that, probably like a decade or even longer. And the Bears are looking on the up and up. So they're trying to keep the momentum going. They know that the defense is their weaker side of the football right now. So if they can put it together this upcoming season, the Bears will be a force to be reckoned with up there in the NFC North.